Chu was a hegemonic, Zhou dynasty-era state. Following the trend of the time, the rulers of Chu declared themselves kings on an equal footing with the Zhou rulers from the time of King Wu in the early 8th century BC. Though initially inconsequential, removed to the south of the Zhou heartland and practicing differing customs, Chu began a series of administrative reforms, becoming a successful expansionist state during the spring and autumn period. It was ultimately incorporated into the prestigious Zhou court and interstate relations as a viscounty, a title bestowed in order to pacify it. With its continued expansion, Chu became a great if corrupt warring state's power, and its culture a major influence on the Han Dynasty. Also known as Jing and Jingchu, Chu included most of the present-day provinces of Hubei and Hunan, along with parts of Chongqing, Guizhou, Henan, Anhui, Jiangxi, Jiangsu, Zhejiang, and Shanghai. For more than 400 years, the Chu capital Danyang was located at the junction of the Dan and Shi rivers near present-day Sichuan County, Henan, but later moved to Ying. The ruling house of Chu originally bore the ancestral name Nai and clan name Yan, but they are later written as Mi and Zhong, respectively. History. Founding. According to legends recounted in Sima Qian's records of the Grand Historian, the royal family of Chu descended from the Yellow Emperor and his grandson and successor Juush. Juuzu's great-grandson Wu Hui was put in charge of fire by Emperor Ku and given the title Zhurong. Wu Hui's son Lu Zhong had 6 sons, all born by caesarean section. The youngest, Jillian, adopted the ancestral surname Mi. Jillian's descendant Yu Zhong was the teacher of King Wen of Zhou. After the Zhou overthrew the Shang dynasty, King Cheng awarded Yu Zhong's great-grandson Zhongyi with the fiefdom of Chu and the hereditary title of Zhongyi. Built the first capital of Chu at Danyang, Western Zhou in 977 BC. During his campaign against Chu, King Zhao of Zhou's boat sank, and he drowned in the Han River. After this death, Zhou ceased to expand to the south, allowing the southern tribes and Chu to cement their own autonomy much earlier than the states to the north. The Chu Viscount Zhong Qiyu overthrew Yi in 863 BC but subsequently made its capital Zhou one of his capitals. In either 703 or 706, the ruler Zhongtong proclaimed himself king, establishing Chu's full independence from the Zhou monarchs. Spring and autumn period. In its early years, Chu was a successful expansionist and militaristic state that developed a reputation for coercing and absorbing its allies. Chu grew from a small state into a large kingdom. King Zhuang was even considered one of the 5 hegemons of the era. After a number of battles with neighboring states, sometime between 695 and 689 BC, the Chu capital moved southeast from Danyang to Ying. Chu first consolidated its power by absorbing lesser states in its original area, then it expanded into the north towards the North China Plain. The threat from Chu resulted in multiple northern alliances under the leadership of Jin. These alliances kept Chu in check, with the first major victory won at the Chengpu in 632 BC. At the beginning of the 6th century BC, Jin strengthened the state of Wu near the Yangtze Delta to act as a counterweight against Chu. Wu defeated Qi and then invaded Chu in 506 BC. Following the Battle of Boju, it occupied Chu's capital at Ying, forcing King Zhao to flee to his allies in Yun and Suai. King Zhao eventually returned to Ying but, after another attack from Wu in 504 BC, he temporarily moved the capital into the territory of the former state of Iyuo. Chu began to strengthen Yu in modern Zhejiang to serve as allies against Wu. Yu was initially subjugated by King Fuai of Wu until he released their king Guojian, who took revenge for his former captivity by crushing and completely annexing Wu. Warring States period. Freed from its difficulties with Wu, Chu annexed Shen in 479 BC and overran Kai to the north in 447 BC. This policy of expansion continued until the last generation before the fall to Qin. However, by the end of the 5th century BC, the Chu government had become very corrupt and inefficient, with much of the state's treasury used primarily to pay for the royal entourage. Many officials had no meaningful task except taking money, and Chu's army, while large, was of low quality. In the late 390s BC, King Dao of Chu made Wu Qi his chancellor. He also enacted building codes to make the capital Ying seem less barbaric. Despite Wu Qi's unpopularity among Chu's ruling class, his reforms strengthened the king and left the state very powerful until the late 4th century BC, when Zhao and Qin were ascendant. Chu's powerful army once again became successful, defeating the states of Wei and Yu. Yu was partitioned between Chu and Qi in either 334 or 333 BC. However, the officials of Chu wasted no time in their revenge, and Wu Qi was assassinated at King Dao's funeral in 381 BC. Prior to Wu's service in the state of Chu, Wu lived in the state of Wei, where his military analysis of the 6 opposing states was recorded in his magnum opus, the Book of Master Wu. Of Chu, he said, "The Chu people are not strong. Their lands stretch far and wide, and the government cannot effectively administer the expanse. Their troops are weary, and although their formations are well ordered, they do not have the resources to maintain their positions for long. To defeat them, we must strike swiftly, unexpectedly, and retreat quickly before they can counter-attack. This will create chaos in their formations and reduce their fighting spirit. If we strike repeatedly, it will wear them out. Thus, with persistence, their army can be defeated." Wazi, Master Wu Chen Song translation. During the late Warring States period, Chu was increasingly pressured by Qin to its west, especially after Qin enacted and preserved the legalistic reforms of Shangyang. In 241 BC, 5 of the 7 major warring states, Chu, Zhao, Wei, Jian and Han, formed an alliance to fight the rising power of Qin. King Kenan of Chu was named the leader of the alliance and Lord Chun Shen the military commander. According to historian Yang Quan, the Zhao general Pang Nuan was the actual commander in the battle. The allies attacked Qin at the strategic Hangyu Pass but were defeated. King Kenan blamed Lord Chun Shen for the loss and began to mistrust him. Afterwards, Chu moved its capital east to Shouchun, farther away from the threat of Qin. Chu's size and power made it the key state in alliances against Qin. As Qin expanded into Chu territory, Chu was forced to expand southwards and eastwards, absorbing local cultural influences along the way. By the late 4th century BC, however, Chu's prominent status had fallen into decay. As a result of several invasions headed by Zhao and Qin, Chu was eventually subjugated by Qin. Defeat. According to the records of the warring states, a debate between the diplomat-strategist Zhang Yi and the Qin general Sima Cuo led to 2 conclusions concerning the unification of China. Zhang Yi argued in favor of conquering Han and seizing the mandate of heaven from the powerless Zhou King would be wise. Sima Cuo, however, considered that the primary difficulty was not legitimacy but the strength of Qin's opponents. He argued that conquering Shu is conquering Chu, and once Chu is eliminated, the country will be united. The importance of Shu in the Sichuan basin was its great agricultural output and its control over the upper reaches of the Yangtze River, leading directly into the Chu heartland. King Huiwen of Qin opted to support Sima Cuo. In 316 BC, Qin invaded and conquered Shu and nearby Ba, expanding downriver in the following decades. In 278 BC, the Qin general Bai Qi finally conquered Chu's capital at Ying. Following the fall of Ying, the Chu government moved to various locations in the east until settling in Shouchun in 241 BC. After a massive 2-year struggle, Bai Qi lured the main Zhao force of 400,000 men onto the field, surrounding them and forcing their surrender at Changping in 260 BC. The Qin army massacred their prisoners, removing the last major obstacle to Qin dominance over the Chinese states. By 225 BC, only 4 kingdoms remained: Qin, Chu, Jan, and Qi. Chu had recovered significantly enough to mount serious resistance. Despite its size, resources, and manpower, though, Chu's corrupt government worked against it. In 224 BC, Yingzheng called for a meeting with his subjects to discuss his plans for the invasion of Chu. Wang Jian said that the invasion force needed to be at least 600,000 strong, while Li Xin thought that less than 200,000 men would be sufficient. Yingzheng sided with Li and ordered him and Meng Wu to lead the army against Chu. Wang Jian was forced to retire from state affairs upon a pretense of illness. The Qin armies scored initial victories as Li Xin's force conquered Pingyu and Meng Wu's captured Qingqiu. After conquering Yan, Li Xin led his army west to rendezvous with Meng at Chengfu. The Chu army, led by Xiang Yan, had avoided using its main force and waited for an opportunity to launch a counterattack. They secretly followed Li Xin's army for 3 days and 3 nights, before launching a surprise offensive and defeating the Qin army. Upon learning of Li's defeat, Yingzheng visited the exiled Wang Jian in person and invited him back, putting Wang in command of the 600,000-strong army he had requested earlier and placing Meng Wu beneath him as a deputy. Worried that the Qin tyrant might fear the power he now possessed and order him executed upon some pretense, Wang Jian constantly sent messengers back to the king in order to remain in contact and reduce the king's suspicion. Wang Jian's army passed through southern Shen and made camp at Pingyu. The Chu armies under Xiang Yan used their full strength against the camp but failed. Wang Jian ordered his troops to defend their positions firmly but avoid advancing further into Chu territory. After failing to lure the Qin army into an attack, Xiang Yan ordered a retreat. Wang Jian seized this opportunity to launch a swift assault. The Qin forces pursued the retreating Chu forces to Kenan, and Xiang Yan was either killed in the action or committed suicide following his defeat. The next year, in 223 BC, Qin launched another campaign and captured the Chu capital Shouchun. King Fu was captured and his state annexed. The following year, Wang Jian and Meng Wu led the Qin army against Wu Yu around the mouth of the Yangtze, capturing the descendants of the royal family of Yu. These conquered territories became the Kuaiji prefecture of the Qin Empire. At their peak, Chu and Qin together fielded over 1 million troops, more than the massive Battle of Changping between Qin and Zhao 35 years before. The excavated personal letters of 2 regular Qin soldiers, He Fu and Jing, tell of a protracted campaign in Weiyang under Wang Jian. Both soldiers wrote letters requesting supplies of clothing and money from home to sustain a long-waiting campaign. Kenan Han Dynasties. The Chu realm at its most powerful was vast with many ethnicities and various customs. Though diverse, the Chu people were united by a common respect for nature, the supernatural, and their heritage and loyalty to their ruling house and nobility, epitomized by the famed Chu statesman poet Qu Yuan and the Songs of Chu. The Chu populace in areas conquered by Qin openly ignored the stringent Qin laws and governance, as recorded in the excavated bamboo slips of a Qin administrator in Hubei. Chu was one of the last states to fall, and its people aspired to overthrowing the painful yoke of Qin rule and re-establishing a separate state. The attitude was immortalized in a Chinese expression about implacable hostility. Though Chu have but 3 clans, it must kill Qin. After Yingzheng declared himself the first emperor and served his short reign, the people of Chu and its former ruling house organized the first violent insurrections against the new Qin administration. They were especially resentful of the Qin corvée. Folk poems record the mournful sadness of Chu families whose men worked in the frigid north to construct the Great Wall of China. The Day's Zhang uprising occurred in 209 BC under the leadership of a Chu peasant, Chen Sheng, who proclaimed himself king of rising Chu. This uprising was crushed by the Qin army, but it inspired a new wave of other rebellions. One of the leaders, Jingju of Chu, proclaimed himself the new king of Chu. Jingju was defeated by another rebel force under Xiang Liang. Xiang installed Zhong Xin, a scion of Chu's traditional royal family, on the throne of Chu under the regnal name King Huai II. In 206 BC, after the fall of the Qin Empire, Xiang Yu, Xiang Liang's nephew, proclaimed himself the hegemon king of Western Chu, and promoted King Huai II to Emperor Yi. He subsequently had Yi assassinated. Xiang Yu then engaged with Liu Bang, another prominent Chu rebel, in a long struggle for supremacy over the lands of the former Qin Empire, which became known as the Chu-Han contention. The conflict ended in victory for Liu Bang. He proclaimed the Han Dynasty and was later honored with the temple name Gauge, while Xiang Yu committed suicide in defeat. The Chu people and customs were major influences on the new era of the Han. Liu Bang immediately enacted a more traditional and less intrusive administration than the Qin before him, made peace with the Xiongnu through hecan intermarriages, rewarded his allies with large fiefdoms, and allowed the population to rest from centuries of warfare. By the time of Emperor Wu of Han, Chu folk culture and aesthetics were amalgamated with the Han-sponsored Confucian tradition and Qin-influenced central governance to create a distinct Chinese culture. Based on the archaeological finds, Chu's culture was initially quite similar to that of the other Zhou states of the Yellow River Basin. Subsequently, however, Chu absorbed indigenous elements from the Beihu lands the state conquered to its south and east, developing a distinct culture from the states of the northern plains. Early Chu burial offerings consisted primarily of bronze vessels in the Zhou style. Later Chu burials, especially during the Warring States, featured distinct burial objects, such as colorful lacquerware, iron, and silk, accompanied by a reduction in bronze vessel offerings. A common Chu motif was the vivid depiction of wildlife, mystical animals, and natural imagery, such as snakes, dragons, phoenixes, tigers, and free-flowing clouds and serpent-like beings. Some archaeologists speculate that Chu may have had cultural connections to the vanished Shang dynasty, since many motifs used by Chu appeared earlier at Shang sites such as serpent-tailed gods. Later Chu culture was known for its affinity for shamans. The Chu culture and government strongly supported Taoism and native shamanism, supplemented with some Confucian glosses on Zhou ritual. The naturalistic and flowing art, the songs of Chu, historical records, excavated bamboo documents such as the Guodian slips, and other artifacts reveal heavy Taoist and native folk influence in Chu culture. The disposition to a spiritual, often pleasurable and decadent lifestyle, and the confidence in the size of the Chu realm led to the inefficiency and eventual destruction of the Chu state by the ruthless legalist state of Qin. Even though the Qin realm lacked the vast natural resources and waterways of Chu, the Qin government maximized its output under the efficient minister Shang Yang, installing a meritocracy focused solely on agricultural and military might. Chu was known for its distinct music. Archaeological evidence shows that Chu music was annotated differently from Zhou. Chu music also showed an inclination for using different performance ensembles, as well as unique instruments. In Chu, the shui was preferred over the zither, while both instruments were equally preferred in the northern Zhou states. Chu came into frequent contact with other peoples in the south, most notably the Ba, Yu, and the Beiyu. Numerous burials and burial objects in the Ba and Yu styles have been discovered throughout the territory of Chu, coexisting with Chu-style burials and burial objects. The early rulers of the Han Dynasty romanticized the culture of Chu, sparking a renewed interest in Chu cultural elements such as the songs of Chu. Evidence of heavy Chu cultural influence appears at Mawangdui. After the Han Dynasty, some Confucian scholars considered Chu culture with distaste, criticizing the lewd music and shamanistic rituals associated with Chu culture. Chu artisanship shows a mastery of form and color, especially the lacquer woodworks. Red and black pigmented lacquer were most used. Silk weaving also attained a high level of craftsmanship, creating lightweight robes with flowing designs. These examples were preserved in waterlogged tombs where the lacquer did not peel off over time, and in tombs sealed with coal or white clay. Chu used the complex calligraphic script called birds and worms style, which was borrowed by the Wu and Yu states. It has an intricate design that embellishes the characters with motifs of animals, snakes, birds, and insects. This is another representation of the Chu reverence of the natural world and its liveliness. Chu produced broad bronze swords that were similar to Wu Yu swords, but not as intricate. Chu was in the region of many rivers, so it created an efficient riverine transport system of boats augmented by wagons. These are detailed in bronze tallies with gold inlay regarding trade along the river systems connecting with those of the Chu capital at Ying. List of states annexed by Chu. This list is incomplete. You can help by expanding it. 863 BCE, 704 BC Quan, 680 BC Shen, 680 BC Shi, 678 BC Deng. After 643 BC Dao, 623 BC Jiang, 622 BC Liao. After 622 BC Yuo, 611 BC Yong. After 506 BC Sui, 512 BC Zhu, 479 BC Chen, 445 BC Qi, 447 BC Kai, 431 BC Ju. After 418 BC Pi, about 348 BC Zhao, 334 BC Yu, 249 BC Lu,